Hello everybody, welcome to the Cold and Dark channel. My name is Jet Wildcat, and on August 9th, a Voepass Airlines ATR72 spun out of control and lost height coming into land at Sao Paulo. Here's what we know so far. So, according to the report on Aviation Herald and by Simon Radecki, a Voepass Airlines ATR72 212A, registration Papa Sierra Victor Papa Bravo, performing flight Voepass 2283 from Cascavel to Sao Paulo with 48 passengers and 4 crew, was on initial approach at about 17,000 feet when the aircraft spun out of control and crashed into a residential area in Via Santa Fe, Vihendos, Sao Paulo, about 7 miles northeast of the Viracopos airport, if I'm saying that right, and about 40 nautical miles northwest of the Sao Paulo airport that they were scheduled to land at. The aircraft broke into several parts, burst into flames. All occupants perished in the crash. No residential houses were hit, and there were no injuries on the ground. So that's I guess the good side of a bad situation is that there was no damage on the ground and no injuries on the ground. The airline confirmed that an aircraft carrying 58 passengers and 4 crew had an accident. Circumstances of the accident are as well as situations of people on board are yet unknown. This was at the beginning of the airline later reported that actually 57 passengers and 4 crew were on board. Unfortunately, all have died in the accident, as stated above. The aircraft had departed Cascavel without any flight restrictions and with all systems ready to carry out the operation. So basically meaning that there wasn't anything prohibiting this airplane from flying, and all the systems, at least initially, or at least as per what the airline is releasing, was well within operation tolerances. So no, nothing that should have been on the aircraft that wasn't. Hospitals in the area had received alert for possible injuries. As you probably can guess, they were not needed at the time. FAB Brazil, their air traffic control provider, reported that the flight was normal until about 1620 Zulu. However, thereafter there was no communication from the aircraft anymore, and the crew did not respond to calls. There was no emergency calls or pilot report of adverse weather conditions. Radar contact was lost at 1622 Zulu. So about from the time that it seemed normal at 20 to 22, it all went in a way it shouldn't have gone. Brazil's Senepia has opened an investigation. I don't know Brazil's aviation industry that well, but I'm assuming that is basically the NTSB of Brazil. They later announced that they had recovered both flight data and cockpit voice recorders. The black boxes are being sent to Brasilia, where they will be read out and analyzed. In a press conference, they confirmed that the aircraft was carrying 61, that a aircraft carrying 61 passengers had not issued an emergency call. On August 11, 2024, emergency services reported that they had completed their tasks at the crash site. All bodies had been recovered. The engines and the tail had been removed for examination. The wreckage site had been handed over to the Brazilian authorities for further removal and analysis of the wreckage. Later on August 11th, the Brazilian authorities reported in a press conference that both black boxes had successfully and completely downloaded and validated. The data is now being analyzed. The engines of the aircraft are being examined to determine whether they were operating at the time of the impact. Investigators from the French BEA, which is basically the NTSB for the French, have joined in the investigation. Investigators from the Canadian TSB, as the engines were manufactured in Canada, are expected at the Brazilian authorities' headquarters shortly. A preliminary report will be expected in about 30 days. So again, we don't know how much of this information will change and what the report will show. But what we do know, again, here's what we do know. ADS-B data shows that the aircraft had been around about 17,000 feet and had just begun the initial descent at 1621 when the flight data became erratic, coinciding with the ground observers' videos of a flat spin. The aircraft climbed again to flight level 172 before beginning the final rapid descent. At the time of the crash, a number of SIGMEDs, or significant weather information, um, or significant meteorological um, conditions were in effect. And both of them could be telling of what actually happened to this aircraft. As you can see, what severe ice forecast on both of these. So that is something that the investigators are going to have to look at. Was this an icing event that transpired? If we look at the Veracruz Airport, winds were 360 at 4,000 meters visibility, light rain mist, um, and the temperatures were fine. I mean, it was a 2-degree spread on both the times. It and going into Sao Paulo was also decent weather, 9,000 foot, 9,000, 8,000 meter visibility, or it might be feet, but visibility, and quite good. So as you can see, the cockpit was intact. Judging by the videos, all 4 corners of the aircraft were there. You didn't see any, big things missing off the aircraft. Um, Now, does that mean there weren't stuff missing off the aircraft that could have caused this? It's a possibility, but what it showed is it wasn't a big in-flight breakup that causes our plane to crash. That's the first thing that investigators are going to look at: is are all 4 corners of the aircraft on? So you have the 2 wings, the front and the back of the aircraft. And judging by the video, uh, it flat spun, and that is why it seems like the wreckage is in such good condition. I mean, it's charred, but I mean, there's a reason why the cockpit is still in in place. And in this picture, you can see that kind of the 4 corners of the aircraft are there. So you can see the wings kind of over here. You got the tail, you got the front, and you got the other wing over here. And then if you look from the top, you can definitely pick out the 4 corners. The fact that there were no injuries on the ground is actually amazing, because look how close they got to hitting this house. Luckily, they did not report if anybody was in this house, but I'm assuming that there either weren't, or the person got out safe, that they weren't hurt. Um, so again, we don't know all the information. Um, Judging by the fact that there were severe icing meteorological conditions in the area, to me, this kind of sounds like another flight that happened with another ATR back in the 90s, American Airlines Flight 4184, where they encountered icing and caused them to lose control of the aircraft, and they crashed into a soybean field while on approach to Chicago. And from that point, actually, American Airlines and any operators, I think, in the United States said, "This airplane does not perform very well in icing conditions." At least that's what I read. Um, so let's put all of our aircraft down in places where icing is typically not a huge issue, down in the Caribbean, down in Miami, down in warmer weather. So does, or the possibility of icing is lowered. It's never going to be zero in aviation. You get the right conditions, um, it is a possibility. But judging by the weather in Sao Paulo is located in the southern, I believe, half of Brazil. So it's not close to the equator, or as close to the equator as probably they would like. But the ATR has built itself a reputation of being a pretty reliable aircraft. Um, was this pilot error? Did they do something in response to icing that maybe caused this airplane to do something it wasn't supposed to? Were there mechanical issues caused by potential other factors? They were saying that the airplane was dispatched with no MELs, no. Basically, the airplane was in good working order. Did something in the air happen? In the videos that we've all seen, I haven't posted any because I do not want to be demonetized. But you can kind of hear propellers, and you can see them still spinning. And again, in the videos, you see all four corners. So it's very hard for me to say it was a breakup or that the engines were running. But again, that is for the investigators to find out. We pray for their families at this time, and hopefully they can at least get answers as to what caused this airplane to go down, and we can make the industry a safer place. So from all of us here at the Cold and Dark channel, my name is Joe Wildcat. We will see you on the next video. Bye for now.